Today's sort of a special day in the history of my layout. The day this video releases, December 5th, is the anniversary of my first full op session on the Finger Lakes Railway. I had one small session before that, a couple weeks before during Thanksgiving Day week, where I had a couple buddies come over and just kind of help test things out. But December 5th was the first time members of the Lakeshores Division Op Squad stopped at my layout and ran a full session for the first time. And since that date, I've now officially had 10 total operating sessions on my layout. I've had over 50 total operators between just people in the model railroading community here locally and the Ops Around the Clock Lakeshores Division Ops event and the Northeast Regional Convention that was here in September. So quite a few operators have now operated. Quite a few sessions have gone by. And I've learned quite a bit. So here's kind of my top 5 things that I've learned in my first year of operations. So first and foremost, things go wrong when you're operating. Every once in a while, there's going to be a derailment. Every once in a while, somebody won't understand your op scheme and will leave a car behind. And every once in a while, a switch will be left thrown the opposite direction and not line and lock normal. And you're going to have a derailment, and that's got to be okay. It takes a lot of patience to make sure that you get through an operation session smoothly. And as a host of an op session, how you react sets the tone for how the rest of the operators react when things do go wrong. I've learned that in order to make sure that the operator's experience continues to be positive even when things do go wrong, swift action from a layout owner is important, but also patient and kind reaction is also 100% necessary. When things go wrong, blaming others, it's not a solution to the problem. Questioning why things happened is a more productive situation. Maybe there was something that didn't get explained properly in my ops briefing, so somebody misunderstood what their assignment was and left that car behind. Or maybe they didn't understand how a caboose industry thrill works. I've had, surprisingly, a handful of people who didn't really understand how those work, and actually had a couple of them break. And I explained to them, it's no big deal. We're going to take that track out of service and we'll be fine for the rest of this session. We're just not going to use it. And those sorts of reactions are super important, not only for the host to have, but the operators that are operating as well. An operator's not going to want to come back to your op session if they were made to feel a fool just because a single truck ended up on the ground or something like that. And along with that comes listening and understanding feedback that your operators give you. This is something that is, in my opinion, the mark of the best hosts for a layout. Those who are actively seeking out feedback on the way that their layout operating sessions went and responding positively when they do get it. Sometimes there's feedback that comes from an operator that's hard for a host to take, but leads to improvement. And there's been many of those cases here on my layout as well. I've got a couple of good friends who are very much not afraid to tell me what goes right and what goes wrong during my op sessions. And I really appreciate that because it leads to better changes. One area in particular where I've gotten a lot of feedback, and it's not necessarily related to the layout itself, but has been with my switch lists. The switch lists that I have are kind of a living, breathing, ever-changing document. I've gotten a lot of feedback about what's good about my switch lists and what's bad about them, and they've changed over time to become clearer, more concise documents that just show the information that you need. And kind of in the same vein as that, I've received a lot of feedback about car flow and car forwarding on my layout. It used to be that cars would just basically travel back and forth between Geneva Yard and their destination on this layout. And it took a few operators telling me that I needed to have better car forwarding in order for me to improve on that. A car that starts the day in Gang Mill's yard on day 1 ends up at its industry on day 2, and a car that's at its industry on day 1 ultimately ends up either at Auburn at the Solve Day Sweep Track or in Gang Mill's yard. So there's really great car flow going on, and that took a lot more rolling stock, and it took a lot more thought on my part, but I think that the ops scheme is benefiting because of it. Sometimes it's even necessary to find a happy medium with the feedback that you receive. There's situations where I've gotten feedback that was really conflicting from my operators. Some operators, for instance, love full momentum and braking capability on their locomotives, and others cannot stand it. So I tried to find a happy medium here myself. I cut the braking momentum to about 25% of what it is stock on an ESU decoder, and I cut the acceleration momentum in half. So you've still got a little bit of momentum on my locomotives, and they do brake relatively quickly in case there's an emergency, but there still is momentum involved. So there's a real world feel, and sometimes that happy medium is the place that you need to live. Just as important as it is for hosts to receive feedback from their operators, but it's also important for a host to effectively communicate feedback to his operators as well. If there's things going on your layout that you don't appreciate, you have the right to let people know that what they're doing is not something that you love. For instance, I've got a handful of people who like to operate here who like to stick the throttle all the way up to 128 speed steps and go flying around the layout. And I've given them feedback and said, hey, this is a short line. We go short line speeds. The max speed limit here is going to be 30 miles an hour. And that's really about as fast as you should be going in any sort of situation. And a lot of times that feedback does get taken into account pretty well by operators, but there's things that you can do as an layout owner to make sure that they don't happen again if they continue, like limiting the total speed of your locomotives. Mine have now been pared down to a pretty slow speed. What you're looking at now is about half speed of what they can do. They don't get much faster. The next lesson that I definitely learned the hard way, and that's don't get into scenery until you know that everything that you have track work-wise is 100% ready, 100% bulletproof, and 100% ready to go. I had, unfortunately, a bunch of issues here in Geneva Yard with the yard ladder, and when I put down the initial coat of Woodland Scenics ballast, it just exacerbated those issues to no end. And, I finally got to the point where I was so fed up with the look of the Woodland Scenics ballast that I pulled it all out. And when I pulled it all out, I had the wherewithal to go back through and thoroughly test everything and make sure everything sat well before I reballasted. It turned out that I actually had a few different places on the yard ladder where the turnouts were kind of uneven. And that's what was causing a lot of my derailment issues. So I leveled all that out before I put down the new ballast. And with the ballast down now, it looks just as great as it did, but would have been nice to not learn the hard way and thoroughly test that beforehand. And in the same vein, and this one hurts a lot more, the switch at Himrod Junction was also a bit heartbreaking. That switch was originally a number 4, and having learned now what I have, I would have never made that a number 4 to begin with. A mainline diverging route really should have been a number 8. If I would have planned properly, that's what it would have been. Thankfully, when I did pull it out, there was room at least to put a number 6 back in there. So it's a little bit better than it was, but still a number 8 would have been way better in that particular area. And that kind of brings me back into our last topic, which is don't be afraid to start over when things aren't working. You'll recall a video that I put out a couple of weeks before the NMRA convention back in September, where I completely ripped out the entirety of the Auburn Road from CPG and all the way to Phelps Supply over on the other side of this backdrop. And that got spurred on mostly because the turnout at CPG was giving the same issues as the one at Himrod Junction. It was a number 4 switch, and it really should have been something larger from the very beginning. Much like the turnout that I had at Himrod Junction, that is now a number 6, so a little bit more forgiving for long, heavy trains and that sort of thing. But while that switch was out, I decided that I might as well rip out all of the track work that I was really unhappy with between CPG and Phelps Supply as well. The op scheme that I had come up with and the small little runaround track there at Geneva Industrial Complex really just wasn't cutting it. And really what made me make that decision was watching a couple of members of my club when they were here for an operating session, bound and determined to get their entire GY1 train out of the way and cut up and combined into all these different sidings in the Geneva Industrial Complex, just so that GC2 could get by and get back to the yard. These two, it was fun more than anything, but they wasted probably a good half hour just cutting up everything that they had and getting it stored away on all these different tracks, where they could have just been done with their work and on their way back to Geneva had they not bothered to do that. And it got me thinking, if we ever got to a point where things were delayed so much with GY1 that GC2 was already on its way back, man, they really would have to wait here forever unnecessarily. And that little runaround track is just not long enough. So I ripped out the main line, I ripped out the curve itself and put in a nice wider curve and separated the industrial track from the main line itself so that if that issue ever comes up again, GC2 is not going to have to wait. GY1 can kind of tuck back into that siding a lot easier now. They can store their whole train on it, and GC2 can just sneak right by. And it's those sort of things that sometimes you're not going to really recognize when you're track planning, but once you start to operate, you learn. And you can't be afraid to pull things up and start over again when it's going to be really beneficial for your operations. So that's about it. We've had 10 total operating sessions on the layout. I've learned a lot, but I also know that 10 total operating sessions in the grand scheme of things is nothing. So if you're an experienced operator, if you're an experienced host, and you think there's anything more that is really useful for people to know, make sure that you leave a comment down below. I'm always looking to learn, and I hope everybody down there in the comments is as well. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to hit the subscribe button. There's plenty more great videos coming your way. We've got an amazing Fremo layout journey that we're just embarking on. The layout here itself, there's still some major changes that are going to be happening here as well. And the workbench is always busy, as those that turn into the Wednesday night live streams will attest to. So love to see you back for another video. Take care, everybody. See you in the next one.